Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts by showing us a mountain at night. As we hear a lot of people running, we see they look like a bunch of ninjas heading straight towards something, which is none other than the heavenly demon. There is a whole army. The heavenly demon says blood and fear, asking if that's really what all of them want. As the army starts to approach him, he stretches his hand out, saying he'll grant their wish, and immediately all of their heads explode on the spot in unison before they could even touch a hair on his body. Their blood starts to form a ring in the sky above him, immediately causing it to rain. But the heavenly demon puts up a barrier so he doesn't get hit by it, and he calls them weak. We see even more people are still here, ready to fight, and he calls them foolish as he begins to accumulate energy into his palm. Some of the martial masters charge in to stop him, but of course, we know it's futile as they start to get ripped apart by his aura. And he says that they can see even at a distance that this is the true power of the soul-augmenting demonic art. Immediately, the entire mountain begins to rumble, and everybody looks up in horror as we see a giant pair of purple hands ascending from the earth, shattering the mountain, heading straight towards the army. The hand begins to strike down, ripping into the earth, destroying everything beneath it, and the people attacking the heavenly demon finally realize that this might be an impossible task to begin with, as we see the hands crushing everything in its palm. All other corpses are now lumped up together, with a purple aura emanating off of them as it slowly starts to head back down towards the heavenly demon, as I assume he is stealing their life forces. Even more blood begins to rain underneath the moonlit sky, and as it starts to fall all around the heavenly demon, we see there are craters everywhere, and he starts to smile and laugh, saying that surely that must have been the last of his victims. Bro is cold. Now it's all so quiet, even though just moments ago it was full of screams from the one-sided slaughter. He says he can't enjoy anything in this life soaked in bloodshed. Immediately, his head starts to ache, as so does his chest, as he grips onto it tightly, beginning to vomit blood. And he wonders if maybe it started, which is the recoil of the soul-augmenting demonic arts, the absolute power he obtained from consuming thousands of souls. While there was definitely a price attached to it all, he had believed he could overcome it, even though the other heavenly demons could not, and he guesses that was purely his arrogance causing him to think this way. Two eyes begin to peer at him from the darkness, as it immediately starts to multiply like crazy, and when he turns to look at it, purple chains begin to fly out of darkness. As some type of portal opens beneath him resembling star, all of the chains begin to restrict his body, stopping him from doing even the slightest bit of moving. He tries his best to resist it, but is not making much progress, and he wonders if they're really trying to drag him to hell. He starts to laugh and asks who dares try to force him to do anything, as he manages to shatter the chains restricting him. Immediately, there is some type of orb floating above him, as everything around it begins to have that purple aura glow to it. His eyes open widely as his body begins to disintegrate. He realizes that he was wrong to begin with, and that the soul-augmenting demonic art wasn't just a demonic art that consumed the souls of others, but rather it purified his in the very end, making him want to walk a completely different path in whatever life he is granted next, and he would prefer a peaceful and quiet life. He wants to be a chill guy. It then jumps to exactly that. A peaceful town with no signs of war or bloodshed, as we see a boy staring at a koi pond. A woman calls out to him, asking why he's here again, saying that he needs to come in and have a meal before he gets cold. Her name is So-So, and she is the Golden Wall merchant's servant. We see the boy raise his hand and swing it forward, which surprises So-So, and we are introduced to Courtesan, the second son of the Golden Wall merchants. So-So starts to get annoyed, saying he's been behaving like this for quite a few days now, and starts to bark at him, saying he needs to go to his room immediately. Courtesan says that he can't believe that he can't even cut off that thin neck of hers, and he calls his body trash, and he says that he really can't get used to this face, as he looks like some kind of girl. We see from the reflection of the pond that the heavenly demon is actually the inhabitant of this body. It then jumps once more to a feast laid out on a table, as Courtesan struggles to even hold up his chopsticks to eat, and he sighs, saying that this body is even worse than trash. So-So tells him not to say that, as he'll get better soon, and she heard that an incredibly skilled physician will be here this time. He asks what a physician whose name he hasn't even heard of would be capable of doing, and she tells him to stop acting like this, saying that he needs to think positively for positive things to happen. He doesn't even try to refute it, but he does say that it has been 10 days since he woke up in this dogshit body, and that he is the second son of the best merchant group in Wuhan. It goes to the moment he woke up, as he struggles to sit up, and he wonders where he is, as his head hurts. Immediately, a ton of people surround him, and Courtesan continues explaining how bad this body is, saying that he can't even put on his own clothes or even eat by himself. While his face may be really handsome, it does not matter, as the underlying issue is that all of his meridians are disconnected, and he could die at any time, and he can't believe his second life is in a body that's so bad. He just needs to focus on trying to survive. If he uses the power of souls to temporarily connect the meridians, and slowly reinforce it until it heals back together, then he might have a chance. But the only way for him to do this is by the soul-augmenting demonic art, and the issue here would be that he doesn't know where he could get the souls. In the past, he could just kill anyone and take theirs, but if he does that, he'll suffer the same side effects again. He sits back down as Soso begins to sweep up absolutely nothing, and he says that he can't let that happen, as he's gotten a rare chance at a second life. The realization about the soul-augmenting demonic art he made right before he died helped him understand that if he uses that again, but differently this time, he might be able to reach a whole new level in this life, a level that no other heavenly demon has ever seen. He calls out to Soso, telling her that he wants to go out today. She asks where he wants to go, saying that she will take him wherever, and he says that he wants to go to a courtesan house. She acts like that's normal, then immediately gets surprised, and he asks why she's acting like this. She says that instead of her, it would be better if the bodyguard warrior named Kyungwon went to follow instead. A courtesan house is pretty much a brothel, I think. She says that he's never been like this before, and that she was really surprised, and he tells her that she should come with him then. She immediately gets flustered and says no thanks. Later that day, as she's putting on a robe for him, she says that he has been acting like a totally different person ever since he woke up, and now he wants to visit a strange place, and she wonders what happened to him. He asks why he doesn't see the bodyguard that's supposed to come with him, and Soso says that he'll come on time, as he's someone who does nothing but train and protects him anyways. Then she says that she hopes that Taizan won't be so hard on himself. He asks what she means, and she says that it just seems like he has given up on everything, and that he should be a little hopeful, at least until the physician gets here. He says after being reduced to this state, he is able to see what others feel, and that Soso truly cares about him, and he smiles, saying that it's just not a bad feeling. He then looks up, saying that it looks like the bodyguard is here, and she wonders what he's talking about because there's nobody there. But immediately, we hear a horse behind the door, and she's surprised, asking how he knew, and he asks how he's meant to not notice when the dude's energy is overflowing. A man begins to approach him, and Taizan stares at him as we are introduced to Chun Kyungwon. He is a Sword Dragon Corps commander, which is an elite organization of warriors for the Golden Wall merchants. Taizan makes some observations, saying that he is like a sword itself. His energy is so refined that it is hard to say that he is just a normal member, and he can feel just how much he has worked to get to where he is now, and that the Golden Wall merchants might not actually be ordinary after all. Sometime later, as they begin riding their horses through the city, Kyungwon tells them that they're here. We see Taizan staring at something, as it is none other than the Fragrant Flower House, which is one of the top 3 courtesan houses. They take their horses to the stable, and Kyungwon says that he'll be waiting out front for him. Taizan asks why he would wait outside, and Kyungwon is confused, and Taizan asks him again why he would even wait outside. Kyungwon says that it is in case something bad happens. Taizan asks if he is that confident that he could reach him inside before something does. Kyungwon doesn't reply, and Taizan says that he should stop talking and follow him, and have some fun as well. Kyungwon says that he can't do that. Taizan asks if he means that he can't have fun, or if he means that he cannot obey his orders. As he starts to glare at Kyungwon, Kyungwon is surprised, and Taizan tells him that it is good if he can have fun and protect him, but if he can't do that, then at least stay close to him. Kyungwon says, "Yes sir," and Taizan smiles at him, then opens the door, saying it is time to head in. Immediately, they are greeted by a whole ton of women who welcome him. Taizan is definitely cooking something up. One of the women starts to play an instrument, setting the mood as all of the other women start to eat and keep Taizan company while talking to him. He then notices that Kyungwon isn't here and asks where he is. One of the women says that he is waiting at the stairs, blocking the path to here. Taizan says he can't believe he is so stubborn and inflexible. Then one of the women pours him a drink, and Taizan says they should drink as much as they want, but he can't drink liquor because he is not feeling well. The woman says if he can't drink liquor, then what should they do, and he says that he wants to hear rumors about him. They are surprised, and he says that they should just tell him everything they know about the second son of the Golden Wall merchants, and he will go around the table one by one, and they can tell him what they know. As the night continues, he says that from what he has heard, he has 1,000 golden yang in one small manor, and a few courtesan houses as his inheritance. Because of his health, he doesn't have much power or influence, and it seems everything else was given to the eldest son Tae-soo. It is a rumor that everybody in Wuhan knows. He says that this is information he never would have heard if he just stayed at home. He sits up, saying he is done with the talking, and they should get started. As he heads to one of the doors, he says it will be hard for him to deal with all of them, and then he turns, glancing at one of the women, saying that just her would be enough. He immediately sits down on the bed, and all the other women start to gossip, asking why he only picked her, saying maybe he will come back next time. The woman takes a seat beside him, and we learn that her name is Hryong. Taesan asks her how long she's been with this courtesan house, and Hryong says that she's been here for about 10 years. He says that's nice, and that means they could just get started then. All of the other women start to leave, passing by Kyungwon, saying that they can all talk to Hryong and figure out what happens later, and one of them makes a joke, saying that he's so frail and weak, he'll probably get broken. But they all agree he's handsome, and they still want to experience it. Kyungwon watches as they all leave, and then immediately, we hear Hryong moaning very loudly. Kyungwon's surprised, and so is literally every single other person within the courtesan house, as they can hear this shit down in the entrance. An older man laughs, saying that is very impressive, and some of the women say that the sound isolation enchantment must have been released. Hryong continues to moan as she grabs onto the bedsheets. We start to understand that her moans aren't actually moans, but rather she is screaming in pain, as he is sucking the soul essence out of her body, consuming it straight from her head using his demonic arts. Sometime later, Hryong's screams are no longer heard, and the door opens. Kyungwon then asks Taesan if he's okay, and he starts to smile, saying that he feels better than ever, as we see Hryong laying in the background. The other women then slowly approach him. As Kyungwon looks nervous, all the other women start to scream out Hryong's name, asking what the hell happened, and we see that she's radiating some kind of energy and that she looks like she had a whole makeover. They start to ask if maybe he gave her some kind of elixir, and she says that's not it. She doesn't remember it either, but her body feels extremely light, as if she has been born again. I think these rumors are about to be wild. Back at the Golden Wall merchant's house, Soso is still sweeping absolutely nothing in size, saying that she's worried he might have fainted at the courtesan house. The door opens, and she turns, surprised, only to see Taesan. She then immediately calls out to him, and runs over, asking if he's okay after his visit. Then he tells her that if she's curious, she can ask Kyungwon, and he walks past her as Kyungwon looks very awkward. Soso says that he seems fine, but she doesn't know if he really is or not. Inside of Taesan's room, we see a purple aura as it starts to float around, as he is actually cultivating, trying to reconnect his meridians, which he manages to actually do by connecting the two branches. He opens his eyes, saying that it turns out he was only able to connect a small meridian. As we see it in his arm, he says that he realized something. Whenever he died, if he kills people and absorbs their souls, there will be side effects, and his body will break down. He must purify the unstable thoughts in the souls of living people and only absorb the purified energy, as that's the most powerful kind of soul energy. Because of how strong the negative thoughts are, the essence is more powerful. He tried it on the courtesans that have gone through all kinds of hardships in life and gained a ton of results out of it, but the problem is that his body is still shit, and it's way worse than he initially thought. It seems like he'll have to live at the courtesan house for the time being. It jumps straight back to it, as the women sort of scream that he's back, and they say that they thought he was meant to be frail and weak, wondering why he's here again. One of the other women says that surely she knows that he has been here for the last 10 days straight. On top of the fact that he's handsome and his family's really good, if you spend a night with him, you'll become really pretty. What did I say about the rumors? They start to all see him in a completely different light, saying he's a true man among men, as they start to fawn over him. We see a woman annoyed, looking down at them all, and she's the owner of this courtesan house. She sighs, saying she can't believe he's here again. Somebody then uses some kind of sound transmission, asking if they should strengthen the noise isolation. She says they tried it quite a few times, but it was useless, and every time he comes here, everybody swarms him, making it ineffective anyway, and the customers are really dissatisfied about it. The person then says that they've heard he's the biggest problem here, and the owner asks if the person, who she calls Phantom Shadow, doesn't think it's strange either. Asking why somebody who's one step away from death is suddenly behaving this way, like a dog in heat, and why he came to her courtesan house instead of one that his family owns. The Phantom Shadow asks if she wants them to go figure out what they are up to, and she says no, since they are still the best merchants in Wuhan. If they investigate them recklessly, they might get into big trouble. She tells the Phantom Shadow they should just keep an eye on him without getting caught, as she needs to figure out what he is doing, And what on earth goes on inside of the rooms? We see him looking around at some women, and we even see Hyung there in the crowd, and he says that he was thinking of taking up the challenge, looking for a specific woman. He tells a man that he wants to see all of them and that he should bring them out. The man asks what he means, saying that, as he can see, all of the most popular women are here already, and there's no way the rest of them would catch his eye. He immediately starts to feel something behind the man, and he realizes that is what he needs, and he walks over towards it, saying that he's the one who decides if they catch his eye or not. All of the women are completely stunned, asking why the hell he's going all the way over there. He asks the woman what her name is, and she introduces herself as Danyang. He says that he sees, and he just needs to borrow her for today. The women say they can't believe he's talking to the worst among them all, and he sure has a unique preference. As Danyang starts to follow him, we see Kyungwon guarding the hallway. Taizan says that her energy is extremely depressing, and that shit must be stuck to her soul, and she's definitely the one he's been looking for. This is dangerous, but now that the crucial small meridians have been connected, he'll be able to take up this challenge and use her soul to connect his core. He opens the door, but doesn't even enter as he sits there for a second, making Danyang confused. He then starts to laugh, saying that these assholes sure have some nerve, and he calls out to Kyungwon in a commanding tone. Kyungwon asks what he needs, and he says that he needs to borrow his sword. As he swings it down, his purple aura comes out of it, and he immediately yeets it forward, stabbing up into the ceiling, and blood begins to drip down onto it. Kyungwon is surprised that there was an assassin, and Taizan says that he knows they're still alive. While he's gotten a little better, he guesses executing delicate movements is still too tough for his body. As the blood begins to drip on the floor, Danyang looks like she's having a severe case of PTSD, and he says that surely he can leave the rest to Kyungwon now, since he has business with her. Kyungwon says yes, and Taizan calls out to Danyang, saying he'll absorb the hell out of her soul today, so she should look forward to it, as we see that his eyes look mad crazy. It jumps to some time later, as we are now at the Yun Manor, and a woman's telling another woman that she has heard some stories involving the second young master, and he even has a nickname now. The other woman asks what the nickname is. We are then introduced to Yuseoyan, the Yun Manor's bodyguard, and she says Taizan's nickname is the Night King of the Fragrant Flower House and the man with unrivaled potency. The woman immediately slams her book closed, saying that she needs to take her to the flower house immediately, as she must meet him. We are introduced to his fiancée, Hareen, and she is the sole child of the Yun Manor, and then it jumps once more straight back to Kyungwon, bowing to Taizan, saying that he's here to bring him back. Kyungwon then notices something, as Taizan is releasing an energy, asking what he did with the assassin. Kyungwon can't believe that he's releasing such an extraordinary energy and says that he has imprisoned him. Taizan says great job, and he wants to rest, so they should go back now. Kyungwon wonders if this is really the same second young master that he knows. Not only has his energy changed, he also has enough skills to accurately strike a hidden assassin, and it's as if he's become another person entirely. As they are walking through some cherry blossoms, Taizan says that he's connected one of his core meridians, resulting in major improvements to his body and senses, but he still has 6 left to connect in his core, and he still has a long way to go, but at least he has passed the stage of being trash. He starts to smile, saying that he can't believe he'd be happy due to such a small achievement, and he sure has changed a lot. He then looks up as we see Hareen, and he wonders who she is and why she's been staring at him with such eyes. She then calls out to him, asking if he's planning to visit the courtesan house today as well. Poor Kyungwon looks so awkward. Hareen says that she probably knew the original owner of the body, and he guesses that Taizan wasn't a complete dumbass. Hareen asks if he's behaving this way because he's dissatisfied with their engagement and if he's intentionally doing this to drive her away. He's surprised by the word engagement, which low-key catches him off guard, and that she thinks he's doing it intentionally. As she walks forward closer to him, she grabs onto his arm, saying that she will never give up on him, so surely he can't give up on her too, as her eyes are full of longing. He wonders what she's talking about and says he doesn't even know who she is to begin with, and he tells her that's not what he's doing. She asks what he means, and he says that he's never given up on her. He starts to mumble that it's his first time meeting her, so of course he can't give up on her, but she doesn't hear this, and she starts to smile, saying that it seems as if he is finally acknowledging her feelings. He realizes that she's the kind that has really bad selective hearing, and he immediately walks past her, saying he'll be leaving then. She calls out to him, looking flushed, and he says that he can't believe a woman has caused the heavenly demon to be flustered, and that she is a truly powerful enemy. He then notices Kyungwon's actually really far ahead, and he wonders what he's doing. Bro is blushing like crazy. Sometime later, in the day, we see Soso pouring bath water into Taizen's tub, and she says that she's heard he met Hareen on his way back home. He asks how she knew about that, and she says that she has eyes and ears all over while looking all proud. Then he says that she must have been the one who told her where he was. She then asks him if Kyungwon is okay. He's confused, asking if Kyungwon is sick or something, and she says no, it's just that Kyungwon really likes Seoyeon, asking if he didn't notice. He asks her who Seoyeon is, and she says that it's the bodyguard who's always with Hareen, and he has had eyes on her for a long time now. Then he says that must be why he walked so far ahead of him, and he starts to smile, thinking about how different his life is. He says that he only used to understand what fear and respect were, and all of this is unimaginable when those were the only two things that existed. However, for some reason, he's not angry, and he's really enjoying this, and his soul must have mixed with Taizen's, and everything around him is becoming very interesting. That night, at the prison inside of the estate, we see a torch being lit, and Kyungwon says that he's blocked the assassin's pressure points for now, but he's a vicious one who would do anything without even a second thought. Taizen laughs, asking if that's really the case, saying that's really good for him, telling him to open it up. Finally, as they open the cell, he looks down at the prisoner, and he smiles, saying that he has a ton of negative energy all over him, and that the most dangerous thoughts are those of an assassin. However, they also have really powerful soul energy, which means he has a lot to get out of this, and now that he has his at least one core meridian fixed, he can even try something different, and he tells Kyungwon to stay outside. Kyungwon's nervous, saying that he's really dangerous, asking what he's intending to do by himself. Taizen asks what he plans to do even if he tells him, saying he couldn't even detect the assassin's presence. Kyungwon tries to tell him that it's different, as it's too dangerous for him to be alone, and Taizen starts to release killing intent, saying that he doesn't like repeating himself. Kyungwon gets some cold sweats and immediately backs out, saying that he understands, slowly closing the door behind him. Back outside, Kyungwon sits there thinking about just now, saying he could not breathe again due to the pressure Taizen exuded, and it was as if he was facing a peak martial master. He then immediately hears screams and readies himself, asking if it's what he thinks it is. As the screams get louder, he then says that's not Taizen's voice, and he wonders what's going on inside. Of course, we already know that he is sucking the soul out of this man. Pause. As the energy starts to fly out of his head, Taizen says this scumbag is even more dangerous than he ever expected, and his soul is low-key way too filthy, as we see it's got a green tint to it rather than only purple like usual. He then feels a sharp pain and immediately stops the process and wonders if it's maybe too much for him to handle right now. He says upon purifying impure thoughts from his soul, only pure soul energy would remain. However, in cases where the soul is too corrupted, the impure energy would assimilate with one another. Although it isn't much, it is mixed, and he'll have to frequent only the courtesan houses for the time being. It jumps to the fragrant flower house, as the owner is biting her nails, hella anxious. She snaps her fingers, calling out to her assistant, saying it has been 2 days since the phantom shadow was caught by Taizen, asking if they don't have any news from him. The man says that he doesn't, and immediately somebody enters the room in a hurry, saying that the madam needs to take a look at this. She looks up, surprised, as we see the phantom shadow is actually back, but he's wobbling all over the place. His eyes are rolling to the back of his head. Taizen must have given him some fentanyl. The madam asks why he's like that, saying that they should try striking his pressure points to wake him up. The guard does immediately that, hitting the back of his neck, but the dude starts to dissolve like the Wicked Witch of the West, causing them both to scream and feel disgusted as he turns into literal bones on the floor. She starts to feel an intense rage, asking if this is really how the second young master is trying to play, and she asks where the hell Danyang is right now. The man says they're preparing to send her to the Crimson Dragon sect leader. The madam grips tightly onto her fan, saying that they will send Danyang to Taizen instead of wherever else. The man tries to tell her that if they do that, the Crimson Dragon will come for them, and if he finds out about this, he'll destroy everything they have. She's only seeing red, so she ignores him, saying that he needs to cancel her visit, as the fragrant flower house will send a present to the second young master instead. We then get a different perspective on the fragrant flower house, as we hear Danyang saying that after some time, a strange rumor about Taizen began circulating. That if you spent a night with him, you'll become beautiful as if you've been reborn, and you'll also be unable to stay away from him. People call him a deity that has gone through age regression, and even those who call him a demon that uses sorcery, and the rumors are spreading like crazy. At first, people thought it was just a rumor circulating between bored courtesans, and she also thought that way. But she can't tell anymore, as we see Danyang saying she wishes to serve him because she doesn't know if he's the real deal or not, as she kind of believes he's descended from the heavens. The madam starts laughing at Danyang, asking if she really wants to serve Taizan and if she has fallen for him. She doesn't reply, and the madam asks what he said to her, asking if he offered to pay off her debt. Danyang says that he didn't say anything to her. The madam scoffs at her, saying she doesn't know what he told her, but she'll be nothing but a possession of the fragrant flower house until her debt is repaid, and she should be obedient and go prepare for her visit to the Crimson Dragon sect leader. But of course, we see that plan got changed, as she is now outside of the Golden Wall merchant estate. Danyang says that she thought she'd get dragged to the Crimson Dragon sect leader helplessly, but alas, she is now where she wanted to be, wondering if maybe fate is on her side. She's so nervous, wondering if he will even accept her because he might think that she's too filthy. Even so, she wants to meet him again. Back inside of his room, he is cultivating once again, as we see glowing veins on the side of his neck. As he is deep in thought, there is a knock on his door that causes him to stop cultivating. He looks over, wondering who it is, and we hear Soso saying that Taizan has a visitor outside. He tells her to let them in, wondering who it is, only to see Danyang, and he's a little startled by it. Danyang greets him, saying that she wishes to serve him and that she is so sorry to visit him so abruptly. Due to the life he has given her, she wishes to live for him and hopes that he'll allow her to stay by his side. He says her appearance is definitely different compared to what it was before, asking if it changed with her impure thoughts being purified, saying that's quite interesting, and he asks Soso where she sleeps. Soso says that she lives in the pavilion where the servants do. He says that he wants her to find a different place and stay with Danyang, and the place must be near him. Soso, surprised, asks if Danyang will be working as a servant. He asks what she would even do around the estate, and when Soso thinks about it, he says that he's gonna head out and she needs to take care of her. Soso stands there confused, saying that Danyang's too pretty to even do servant work, and she wonders why Taizan's been acting so strange, wondering if maybe his lifespan is running out. It then jumps to the Fallen Flower House, which is a different courtesan house. Taizan looks excited, saying he likes the name already, and he's looking forward to this because there's definitely a ton of corrupt soul energy in there. As he tells Kyungwon he's gonna be going in, we see a burly man enter the frame, calling out to Taizan. Kyungwon turns on alert, and the dude says he was wondering who took his Danyang away, asking if it was really just a young brat, and we see it as the Crimson Dragon sect leader named Jeksham. Some civilians see him and immediately start to run away, saying that they'll be killed if they get on his nerves. Taizan stops walking and asks what's the deal with this musclehead. Kyungwon says that he is Jeksham and tells him who he is. Taizan asks about the Crimson Dragon sect, and Kyungwon says they are an unorthodox group that established themselves in this area. He starts to get annoyed, saying that just means they are bandits, and they're nothing but leeches, yet they dare to give themselves such a grand name, and he tells Kyungwon to ignore them. Jeksham is completely caught off guard, asking if he's really ignoring him, and says that he looks like a gigolo. This snaps something in Taizan, and he starts to get pissed, making him give the dude a death glare, asking who the hell he is calling a gigolo, saying he already dislikes that his face is so pretty and this shit really bothers him. He wonders why this dude who looks like a human orc is telling him that he looks like a gigolo. Jeksham starts to laugh loudly, saying that he looks so scared and he must be a helpless bitch. Taizan tells Kyungwon that excluding Jeksham, he'll leave the rest to him. Kyungwon immediately starts to draw his blade, saying that means he has to deal with two people. Jeksham's men ready themselves, saying they can't wait to see how skilled Kyungwon is. Jeksham laughs, saying that he can't believe he'd hire a bodyguard just to look manlier, and since he's shown some courage, he'll look over this on the condition that he has to hand over Danyang to him. Taizan says not a chance, and this dude yaps too much, asking if he's planning to fight with only his mouth. Jeksham starts to get annoyed and starts to charge in while making sure to hit his daily mew streak, saying that he's going to make sure to bruise that girly-ass face of his. As the punch starts to get right in Taizan's face, Kyungwon turns to notice it and yells, trying to tell Taizan to get away from it. Taizan slowly raises his hand upwards. Giving him one hell of an upper palm strike, Taizan immediately feels a sharp pain in his wrist, saying that he held himself back in case his body couldn't take it. He says his body truly is hopeless. We then hear a thud. We then see that Jeksham is slumped out onto the ground, and Kyungwon asks him if he's okay. Taizan asks him if he's killed the rest already, and Kyungwon asks what he means, saying of course he didn't kill them. Taizan laughs, calling him weak, saying that he needs to finish them and follow him. Kyungwon says that he understands while sweating. Taizan starts to walk away and stops himself, saying that if anyone ever asks, he's the one who killed Jeksham, as he hates getting himself in troublesome matters. Kyungwon sits there and says yes sir while standing in front of Jeksham. He then looks down nervously, as we learn that he actually killed Jeksham with that strike. I thought bro was slumped out, and he says it wasn't a coincidence that Taizan caught the assassin, and he wonders just who on earth he is and how he has changed so much since when he met him before. The next morning, as the sun starts to rise, we see him with a woman beside him in the bed. He says his body is in bad shape, and he wonders if he might have used half of his energy up in that altercation. Back when he was the heavenly demon he would have never had to worry, but this body breaks down with just the slightest bit of force, and he knew he was too rash. But as the heavenly demon, he can't accept being called a gigolo. He then heads back home, asking why Hareen's bodyguard is here, as we see Danyung pouring her a drink. Seoyeon sees that he's here, and Taizan says he doubts that she's here for the tea, asking her what she wants. Kyungwon is in love. The doors close behind Danyung as she leaves, and Seoyeon asks Taizan if he brought that servant just now from the courtesan house. He says, strictly speaking, she came here by herself, but he can't be bothered to explain all of that. So he asks her what it would mean if that was the case. Seoyeon then looks up at him, and she notices that his robe is loose, asking him if he just came back from the courtesan house. He says yes, and she lets out a very long-winded sigh, and he asks her what her problem is. She tells him that this is about his engagement with Hareen, and that it is definitely about to be broken off. They ended up having some conversation off-screen, and he says to sum it up, what she told him was that someone sent a marriage proposal to his fiancée, and because it came from the Zhongli clan and the Murim alliance, the Yun Manor Master, who was put on the spot, decided to break off his engagement due to his actions. Seoyeon says that it hasn't been decided yet because Hareen is completely opposed to the idea. She looks like she has more to say, and Taizan says that he guesses it's hard for her to keep opposing in the current situation, and he says that he doubts she's here just to say that, asking if the manor sent her here because they're afraid the Zhongli clan might harm him. She says yes, and that Hareen specifically asked her to protect him. When she goes to tell him about the Zhongli clan, he says that they are nasty bastards. She says that he shouldn't say that so openly, and he begins to smile, saying that they abandoned the other clans and ran away in the war against the heavenly demon, and he can't believe that they are still living so wickedly. He then scoots his chair back, saying in any case, since she's here to protect him, he finds that very interesting, and he wants to see what she can do. It then jumps to that night as they are walking through the forest, and he says that he has finally discovered someone worth challenging, and he can connect the second meridian today. There's a whole lot going on here. Seoyeon is glaring at the back of his head, Kyungwon is sneaking glances at her, and Taizan is just annoyed. He tells her that she doesn't have to follow him if she doesn't want to, and she says that's not it. This is the least she should be doing. He tells her to do as she pleases. Taizan then stops walking. Kyungwon asks what's going on, and even Seoyeon is confused. Taizan asks how many there are. Kyungwon wonders what he's talking about and then immediately senses something as he turns around, seeing that there are 3 dudes in the trees behind them. He tells Taizan how many there are, but Taizan says no, there's actually 4, which means the one he didn't notice must be quite skilled. 3 of them jump down to the ground in front of them, and one of the men says that he guesses an ambush won't work anymore. Kyungwon goes to ready himself, and the other guy finally makes his appearance, saying that the 3 of them need to come with him immediately. Taizan wonders why the unorthodox scumbags are trying to be so respectful, telling Kyungwon he wants to guess how skilled the guy is. Kyungwon says okay, and he starts to check the dude out, saying based on the energy he's emitting and the faint scent of blood, he's definitely not ordinary. However, Kyungwon says that he is at least 3 levels higher than him. Taizan smiles, asking why he's still standing around, saying he needs to go verify if his guess is correct. As Kyungwon starts to walk forward, all 3 men in front of him instantly sense something as their bodies freeze up, and they wonder what's going on because they can no longer control themselves. He walks between them without even having to fight. The dude in the back laughs, asking if he really is trying to fight him by himself, saying that the energy he exudes is pretty impressive, but he should stop acting tough and follow them quietly. Kyungwon barely dodges the attack as it grazes his hair. He then looks back up at the man, as we see the dude raising his weapon, ready to finish him off. But Kyungwon locks back in, grabbing onto his blade, and he unsheathes it, blocking the dude's attack, which sends him back a little bit. Kyungwon then goes on the offensive by pushing forward, and he and the man begin trading blows with one another, for a total of 4 times. The dude says that he's way more skilled than he originally thought, and he underestimated him too much because he is just a merchant's bodyguard. The dude then tightens the grip on his blade and leaps into the air, going for a finishing attack. Seo-in tells Taizan that they need to help him, but Taizan says that that's not too bad and that it's going to be over with his final strike. Seo-in asks what he means and then looks back over, as we see a very bright slash come through, sending an arm flying through the air, and the dude begins to scream as it was none other than Kyungwon who took the win here. Seo-in says that is crazy, especially since it only took him 5 clashes to defeat someone that skilled. Taizan's just annoyed that he only took the guy's arm off and didn't kill him. Seo-in says that while Kyungwon is strong, he wasn't at this level up until recently, and she wonders if Taizan maybe gave him an elixir or something. Taizan tells her that she should stop standing around and deal with the rest, as he has questions for them, so she shouldn't kill them and just block their pressure points and subdue them. She says yes, sir, and then unsheathes her blade, dashing forward, immediately throwing out 2 attacks, hitting one dude in the back of the neck and the other right under his armpit, paralyzing them both. She looks around, wondering where the last one is. Kyungwon yells, telling Taizan to get away. Seo-in then realizes that the dude got past her, and she turns in fear, as all she can do is helplessly watch as the guy goes to stab Taizan directly in the throat. But Kyungwon saves the day as he grabs the dude's head and makes him eat the dirt. Taizan wonders what he is doing and then looks back over towards where Kyungwon came from, saying that means he chose to save him instead of chasing after the assassin, and that he still thinks Kyungwon is way too damn soft. Kyungwon apologizes for losing the assassin, and Taizan says that if he were the heavenly demon, this would have been an unforgivable mistake, and he would have killed him on the spot. But he starts to smile, saying for some reason he's not actually upset, and he sighs, telling him to forget it, that he should just gather the other 3 assassins in one spot. After he's done exactly that, Taizan asks what they should do with them all as we see the dudes just laying there. Taizan then says that killing them would be the best choice, and one of the assassins starts to beg for his life, saying he'll answer all of his questions. Taizan sits there, staring at them, wondering why the dude's ready to snitch so quickly, and says that since nobody's talking, he's just gonna kill them all. The dude starts yapping by himself, saying he already told him he is ready to snitch. He says they're from the Crimson Dragon sect and they're here on orders of the vice sect leader. This morning, they beat up someone who refused to pay protection fees, and then they trashed his inn for not wanting to serve them. The dude just keeps snitching left and right as his 2 boys stare at him, wishing he'd shut the hell up, which he does, and then Taizan tells him that's enough. The guy slowly opens his eyes, seeing Taizan walk away from him, and realizes that means they survived. Taizan tells Seo-in and Kyungwon that they need to bring them back with them, so keep them alive as long as they talk. Seo-in then realizes where he's going, asking if he's crazy to go to a courtesan house after all of this. At the Fallen Flower house, we hear a girl moaning, which of course we know is screaming, as Seo-in and Kyungwon sit there in front of the door in very uncomfortable silence. Kyungwon immediately turns his head away as Seo-in goes to look at him, and she asks him if this is okay, saying surely he needs to go in, and he tells her that it's fine, as they just need to wait till morning. Seo-in wonders what's the deal with his reaction, asking if it's always been like this. As the moaning continues, we see the 3 dudes are actually in the room, staring up at the ceiling. I actually feel bad for these dudes. Sometime later, the sun is seen shining through a window as Taizan exits. He's surprised by something as he sees everybody waiting for him, wondering why all the guys are alive since he only told them to keep them alive if they're talking. Damn, would have been funnier if they were in the room. We see Seo-in thinks he's a beast, whereas the 3 goobers think that he's a hero. Kyungwon tells him that they've actually been talking a lot. Taizan tells him to give him a recap, and Kyungwon says their orders were to bring him to the Crimson Dragon sect. The identity of the assassin that got away is something only the Crimson Dragon sect leader knows. Taizan thinks about it, saying the guy was definitely not an ordinary martial artist, and it would have been hard for a normal bodyguard to handle him, but Kyungwon being stronger than they thought was a very unexpected variable to them. It would be too blatant for the Zhongli clan to be behind this, though. He decides that they're going to head back to the estate first and to bring them along, and Kyungwon says yes sir. Back at the estate, he puts his hands on a door, opening it, saying he's going to cast a restriction on these 3 dudes first. He tells Seo-in and Kyungwon to pay attention, as he's going to teach them some useful martial arts starting today, and they should pay very close attention. They're both surprised that he's going to be teaching them martial arts, and he says this is a simple restriction technique, and he'll start by teaching them this. As he starts to tell them how to do it, we see the dudes all having different reactions. Taizan says that control over inner energy is key here, so make sure to practice it well. Both Seo-in and Kyungwon are surprised, saying they've never seen this restriction technique before, but they were able to understand it immediately. Taizan puts his hand on the back of the dude's neck, telling him that he's going to do it lightly, and if the dude disobeys his orders, he's going to lose his sight. The guy tries to tell him to wait. Even without the use of restriction techniques, he wouldn't do anything stupid, but it's too late as it immediately starts, and we hear the dude screaming out of fear for his life. It then goes quiet as we see the guy sitting there, shaking on the floor. Taizan tells the two of them to try different restrictions on the last two guys. Seo-in wonders how he knows all this stuff and why Kyungwon is just doing whatever he says obediently. Bro looks evil. Taizan then says that they should make a restriction that his testicles would explode if he goes against him. The dudes immediately scream hell nah and their eyes start to water. I hope these guys stay alive, as all of them are good comic reliefs. It then jumps to the Joseo Pavilion at the exact same time, and we see a man sitting at a table looking at something. His name is Baek Woo-aeng, and he is Taizan's uncle. He's looking at a note that says that the fragrant flower house still hasn't acknowledged anything. He is talking to his son, Baek Sang-il, who is the future pavilion master, and he says that if they keep shaking them, they'll definitely show an opening. Woo-aeng closes the note, saying whatever the case is, it doesn't matter if they acknowledge it or not, as they just need to make good use of this incident and get as much as they can for the Golden Wall merchants. The Fragrant Flower House is an intelligence organization under the pretense of being a courtesan house, and they need to take this chance to bring them under the wing of the Golden Wall merchants. Sang-il says he'll bear that in mind, and Woo-aeng asks if there's any other news. Sang-il says that after the Crimson Dragon sect leader died, there has been a power struggle within the sect, and it looks like they're soon going to split into two groups, and that there are some external influences involved. Sang-il asks his dad if he thinks it could be them without saying who it is, but his dad lets it rip, saying that it is most likely the Golden Heavenly Alliance, and that he needs to pay close attention. The Golden Heavenly Alliance is formed by a few merchants within Wuhan. On the surface, they say they gathered together to coexist, but the alliance is actually going up against the Golden Wall merchants. Woo-aeng wonders what they are scheming, and Sang-il tells him that if they detect any suspicious movements, they'll go after them immediately. They both sit there with awkward silence for a second. As Woo-aeng clears his throat, he says that he heard people are calling Taizan the Night King recently, and he asks Sang-il if he's heard of any medicine or food that he's been consuming to help his health. Sang-il says that he hasn't heard anything particularly, and that he just has great stamina at the cost of his health, and no one knows when he might die, yet he's pouring so much of his vigor into this, which is definitely going to shorten his life. Woo-aeng says that he knows, and then he stops walking, saying even if that is the case, he is so envious of him. What a chat. Later in the day, we hear Soso asking what the hell is going on, as we see the three dudes have actually lived. Taizan says that she mentioned earlier she needs some labor, so he brought some back. She says even if that is the case, they look a little odd, and he tells her that if she doesn't want to use them, she doesn't have to. She says that she can't believe he remembers what she said randomly one day, and that these guys look very off-putting. They remind me of troll dolls. She says that she feels as if Taizan has become strangely kind. Taizan then raises his hand, saying starting from the left, and he starts to give them names, naming them Black 1, Black 2, and Black 3, and the trio is going to be called the Blacks. They're all surprised, and he asks if they're not happy with it. They immediately slam their heads straight into the ground, saying anything he says they'll agree with, as they love it very much, and that they are the Blacks. Number 3 says that's exactly as number 1 said. Taizan walks away, all giddy, asking if she heard that, saying that those are their names now and she can use them however she wants. Soso then calls out to him, and he cuts her off by asking where Kyungwon is, saying he hasn't seen him anywhere. She says that he should be training at the moment. Taizan wonders why he's always training, saying that he's living a stupidly honest life. It then jumps to the training hall, as we hear Kyungwon training. He says in the fight against the Crimson Dragon sect leader, all Taizan did was lightly strike his chin with his palm. He's never seen that martial art before, as we see him trying to imitate it exactly as Taizan did it. He says that he's never regretted joining the Sword Dragon Corps, and if the Golden Wall merchants run into a crisis, do all you can to help them, as that is their motto, and as long as he does that, he'll always be paid handsomely. But it's also true that he's anxious. However, he suddenly felt a change, as in the midst of training one day, he spotted something, which is none other than Taizan walking behind everybody else, and he says that he realized that he would help him reach new heights. He then hears Taizan asking how long he intends to train for, which catches him off guard, as he didn't expect him to be here. Taizan tells him that they need to go to the courtesan house soon, and Kyungwon says okay, but he has a quick question he'd like to ask him. Taizan asks what it is, and Kyungwon asks if he's decided if he's going to keep hiding. Taizan asks what he means by hiding, and Kyungwon says at first the assassin, and then the Crimson Dragon sect leader, and now the restriction technique, and after seeing all of this, he is certain. Taizan begins to wonder if maybe he realized who he is, and he thought that Kyungwon was just a musclehead, and he wonders if maybe he let his guard down too much. He can't let anybody know he's the heavenly demon, and he was starting to like him little by little, but in the end, maybe he has no choice but to just kill him right here and now. If you've watched till the end, comment, "Chill guy," to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.